Bloodborne is undeniably one of the most requested video game re-releases, whether it be in the form of a remaster or remake, across the entire video games industry. And 2024 was a pretty big year for Bloodborne, not by official means of course. However, we did get the introduction of a PlayStation 4 emulator that goes by the name of ReShade PS4. The first version of this emulator was actually released in September of 2023. However, it wasn't until early 2024 where we started to see some major progress being made towards it that actually allowed us to start finally booting games like Bloodborne. And the progress that was made towards this emulator for the months coming afterwards was staggering. To actually see Bloodborne working to a certain degree in-game and running at higher frame rates as well as much higher resolutions is the stuff of dreams. It's one of the best prime examples of if the official group of people aren't going to do it, then f*** it, we're gonna do it. Well, recently on Christmas Day, version 0.5.0 of the emulator was released. And with it comes a lot of improvements, especially when looking towards the stability and compatibility side of the emulator across varying different PCs. One of the biggest issues with this emulator is just how taxing it can be on your PC across RAM, VRAM, and CPU. So because of this instability, it means that running games like Bloodborne isn't perfect. But with every update that gets applied every few months, this emulator continues to improve, and with the recent version, I would go as far as to say that yes, it's probably finally time you downloaded ReShade PS4 to be able to play an improved version of Bloodborne. Throughout 2024, I've been providing updates towards the progress being made towards ReShade PS4, specifically looking at Bloodborne. And there has been some major glaring issues when trying to emulate this game, like completely missing textures, missing parts of the map, and entire pieces of geometry, missing sound effects, missing special effects, and of course, not to mention the continual crashes. It's been a pretty cool experience to play a game like Bloodborne at a high frame rate, considering that all other FromSoft games now run at 60 frames. Bloodborne is the odd one out. And to also indulge in this game's absolutely unique, one-of-a-kind art direction at much higher resolutions, looking at 1440p or of course 4K. But admittedly, while this is an absolutely awesome thing to experience, it's been much more novelty than anything else due to the instability of the emulator. But with version 0.5.0, I can confidently say that stability is mostly here depending on how you're playing, and a lot of those previous issues that we faced with the game have now been fixed, meaning that you can have a mostly enjoyable experience from start to finish on PC. Now, I mentioned that depending on how you're playing Bloodborne is going to determine the stability of your experience. Through the patches menu in the emulator, you can enable things like higher resolutions and frame rates. And these are the two biggest basic things that would classify something as being remastered. This is why someone would want to play Bloodborne on PC, right? But unfortunately, where the emulator currently is, there are still some issues that comes along with enabling higher resolution patches. So for the best stable experience here, it is best to just opt for the native 1080p, the resolution that was intended for Bloodborne. 60 FPS is mostly fine, though your experience is going to be more stable if you just decide to not enable any patches here, including 60 FPS, but running the game at 1080p, 60 frames per second, provides a pretty surprising and honestly very impressive experience of Bloodborne here on PC. And like I said, a lot of those previous issues with the emulator have finally been fixed, like the sound. We now have glorious sound effects. Now, None of those texture-related issues, especially when you would attack an enemy and blood would splatter across the player character model, and special effects like fire or the glow of items to indicate that you can pick up an item on the ground. The workarounds that a lot of people would use to fix a lot of these various issues throughout the game on the previous versions of Shad PS4 was via the use of mods. There is a medium-sized Bloodborne mod nexus, which is pretty cool to see, and there's a host of different fixes, but with the current version of the emulator, you are not required to use any additional downloads, mods, fixes, nothing. And for most of my Bloodborne updates that I have been releasing, I've been trying to showcase the game without the need or use of any mods, and what you're looking at here is unmodded gameplay. Purely just the powerhouse of the emulator itself. Here's the thing though, we are looking for a remastered experience of this game, right? And we already have the higher frame rates along with the higher resolutions if we want to opt for it. Though there are some issues that still come with it, you can experience Bloodborne this way. But we want to take this even further. We can only imagine that if there were to be an official remaster, there would be additional improvements made to the game engine to make the game look even better. I have mentioned a mod in the past called the Bloodborne Remaster project, created by From Softserve, though I've decided not to show this off up until now, just because the previous versions of Shad PS4 were so unstable. I wanted to see with version 0.5 how well this mod actually works now. The footage that you guys are seeing is that mod installed, and it's pretty glorious. Additionally, I have another mod installed, which is a ReShade preset known as Dreams, created by Dark Souls fan 192. The configuration of this ReShade preset seeks to give a more remastered look to the game, and so I thought the ReShade preset along with the Remaster project mod working in tandem will give us the best simulation of a Bloodborne remaster. Do note that the footage here though is still running at the internal resolution of 1080p. So what exactly does the Bloodborne Remaster project seek to do? Well, we have improved upscale textures by 2 times. Much better level of detail for textures off in the distance. Furthermore, ambient occlusion, parallax occlusion giving depth to all the textures throughout the game. Improved shadows by increasing their range and visibility. More point light added throughout the game, so previously unused light sources like street lamps are now lit. The anti-aliasing throughout the game has also been disabled because From Software's use of this tool here was not very good for Bloodborne, and rather there is actually a ReShade preset that comes along with the remaster project that uses a ReShade version of anti-aliasing, which is much better than the one included within Bloodborne. So in my opinion, with both of these installed, the game looks fantastic, especially the upgraded textures. This is another sort of basic thing that should be expected when it comes to a modern remaster. It helps an already gorgeous looking game stand out even furthermore. But I do feel like this is very much a personal preference type of thing. We've also got depth of field added here too, which I know is either a love it or hate it sort of situation. However, just like enabling the higher resolution patches, you're going to stumble across the same issues like crashes or completely missing geometry. The collision will still be there, but you'll have texture and special effects issues and glitches out the bunghole. The remaster project is still very much not stable. However though, we have to keep in mind that both Shad PS4 and the remaster project are still very much work in progress. Given the amount of progress that's been made since September of 2023, I would say that we should have version 1.0 of Shad PS4 by sometime late next year. And looking at the remaster project, it's currently at version 0.81. We still have a little while more to wait until both of these can be used together to create a truly remastered experience of Bloodborne. What's great to know though is this very much exists, and right now you can experience it for yourself. It's pretty insane to think that at the end of 2023, something like this was deemed not possible. It just simply didn't exist at all. We're now sitting here at the beginning of 2025 and it's very much a real thing. This is literally the closest we've come to an enhanced version of Bloodborne, something that people have been foaming at the mouth for close on 10 years. As I've mentioned previously, 2025 actually marks the 10th anniversary of Bloodborne, and so we're all curious to see if Sony actually do anything for it. Remember that it's completely up to Sony if anything more happens with the Bloodborne IP, as they are the sole owners and not From Software. I do believe that Sony will do something more with Bloodborne at some point. There's been a lot of rumors circulating, but nothing has ever really turned out to be true or has been concreted, though I feel that just like what Sony did with the launch of PS5 with making the remake of Demon's Souls, they'll likely do a similar thing as a really great launch title for PlayStation 6 with Bloodborne. Personally, that's what I can see happening. We also have to keep in mind too that the recent news of Sony and Kadokawa, the parent company of From Software, is nothing but good for Bloodborne. There was talk about Kadokawa wanting to be acquired by Sony. Kadokawa wanted the entire company to be purchased. However, this didn't end up happening, but rather Sony decided to just simply invest $320 million into the company. Previously, they already had shares, but this is a much larger investment. This, of course, brings the relationship between Sony, From Software, and Kadokawa much closer, as Sony are now the biggest shareholders of this company. I don't think the question is a matter of if we're going to get something more with Bloodborne, but more so when. Either way, right now, with the current version of shared PS4, 1080p, 60 frames per second, it's totally here, it is simply incredible, and this experience is only going to improve as we make our way through 2025. If you've been holding off from downloading this emulator to be able to play Bloodborne on PC, now is a really good time to jump in. That being said, if you can hold on just a little bit longer and wait for the version 1.0 release of shared PS4, that's where you're going to have the best experience, especially with the additional extras like the Remaster project. Hopefully, stability by then will pretty much be sorted out. However guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Just thought I would provide yet another Bloodborne update. Be sure to smack that like button as it helps me out, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with everything going on here. A big thank you to my wonderful patrons. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and we'll talk real soon.